Now on to the images. Here we go, people. Here we go. Ooh, excuse me. Still sick. It just never ends. Alright. Now we're going to hit the image section with a little bit of a history on the weapons and various techniques and stuff utilized that I think we will probably see in the sequel, if not in these pages later on. So, here we go. We come across this cool photo of some of the vets, one chugging a beer there, one looking very Mickey Rourke-esque, one in the background looking very Michael Gross from Tremors fame, with a side pic of another guy standing next to a wooden house in military garb. And it goes on to say here that the olive drab battle dress uniform used in Vietnam War on the left is worn together with a jungle hat, which was often used by the Baker teams, and on the right with a co-called baseball hat. During long-range operations, U.S. Special Forces avoided the use of the helmet because of its weight. And then we get another picture of a standing next to the tented apparatuses with a young man in full garb. And it goes on to say that the tiger stripes battle dress uniform never officially issued. It was available in many slightly different colors and was mostly used by Special Forces soldiers. In the above photo, you can see the so-called night version, which was the Baker team's favorite one. It recently reappeared in Afghanistan, used by few and very rare U.S. Special Forces soldiers. We then get a wonderful barrage of pics of the Randall-made knives. The Orlando, Florida, silver-bladed gold two-tone knife. The the Model 18 Randall knife with compass, also known as the Baker knife. Nowadays, the knife is still sold with a naked handle, just like during the Vietnam War, and the buyer then wraps its handle with a cord at choice. Those cords a lot of times were fishing line used for various sewing and trap making, because they're hard to see. It's almost not like floss, but very transparent, so it's hard to see. You can make a lot of cool traps with that. Randall designed some of his knives together with SOG personnel, and this is one of those knives that lately went into mass production exactly like the Randall and SOG had designed it. The one used by SOG soldiers used a black coated blade. Then we're going to come down to the caliber 4.5 ball M911. The model M1911 pistol, 1 century later, the 1911 is still an outstanding pistol, still in use by law enforcement and military as well, mostly in the United States. And despite the fact that some of the most famous features as the caliber have been evaluated recently, the pros are the use of the two safeties, its extreme reliability even under the most dirty situations, and its accuracy. Many SOG soldiers shelved it for the Browning high power in order to have a larger magazine at disposal, almost a double. With regard to this decision, SOC soldiers were precursors of the modern high capacity small caliber pistols that started being worldwide used during the 90s. Now we're going to see the Ruger with a suppressor. A wonderful picture of that Ruger pistol model MK1 caliber 22 with integrated suppressor. It was a very accurate pistol, very light and extremely reliable. Contrary to most weapons that can be silenced, the caliber 22 is an already subsonic caliber. So in order to get the maximum discretion, you don't need to use special ammunitions. It was a very popular weapon between spies, guns for high and CIA agents. It was mostly used by the shadow men, reconnaissance scouts of the two Baker teams. Some very special units use it still nowadays. In fact, they use the Mark II, a slightly updated version. It's a little James Bond, I must say. A little James Bond. Now, Wallace takes a look into the Claymore mine with directions on how to use it in the corner, and a lovely picture of the mine itself. The M18A1 Claymore mine, anti-personnel mine with directional explosion, cone-shaped, which explains the front towards enemy writings. It used to shoot 100 steel balls in 30-degree angle of explosion. It was usually placed on the ground and ignited using a wire ignition, but there were other ways of using it. It is still in use nowadays. So now we're going to come down to the frag and smoke grenades, if I'm correct. From left to right, smoke grenade, fragmentation grenade, and phosphorus grenade. The phosphorus grenades, white phosphorus, also known as white Peter, were technically considered smoke grenades, but in reality, they were incendiary ones and most used inside the tunnels, where those grenades were able to burn out all the oxygen in a short amount of time, and also killing the enemies by asphyxiation. His flame used to burn at a very high temperature, couldn't be extinguished using water, and when it touched the skin, it used to attach to it kind of like a napalm did, creating a severe burns and very difficult to treat. That were very difficult to treat. After the Vietnam War, using phosphorus grenades near inhabited zones was declared a war crime. But since such a legal definition is quite ambiguous nowadays, it is very rarely used by any army to avoid controversies. Now we're going to take a look at one of the primary weapons, the M16, when Wallace provides a nice little photo of that. The M16 was a very futuristic rifle shooting at a light caliber for its era, which is nowadays considered a medium one. It was an assault rifle with respect to its heavier and more personal counterpart, the M14, which was considered a battle rifle. A distinction that was never defined very well, and nowadays doesn't exist anymore. Used since the very first start of the conflict, it was issued with 20-round magazines, and both a caliber working system completely new, but in the beginning of its story, it proved itself a very bad design, jamming too often and with other problems that continued until its barrel was modified and soldiers trained to clean it much often than they used to. SOG soldiers, which were much more trained than the average ones, had less issues while using it since the beginning, and they liked it against the option of the most because of its lightness, a very important feature design long-range missions. Near the end of the conflict, the Army started using 30-round magazines, and its original too-fast rate of fire in full auto, 20 rounds per second, that's fast, was slowed down. After those modifications, it became a very fine weapon. Very iconic weapon. Now we're going to take a look at the XM. The XM177E2. Wallace provides a photo here. Designed a little time after the M16, it was nothing more but a shortened version of the former. With regards to its era, it was unbelievably light and easy to handle rifle, just like a submachine gun, but featuring a range and power almost on par with a full-size assault rifle. Its very, very fast rate of fire was never changed. It could empty a 20-round magazine in just 1 second. It was the weapon of choice of SOG men and special forces as well, together with the AK. Now we're going to get into the AK-47, one of the most iconic weapons, I guess, in the Vietnam War. and Wallace provides a wonderful shot of a female officer standing tank-side wielding this weapon. The AK-47, introduced in 47, is the most successful design in firearms history. I didn't know it was introduced in 1947. It was a Russian design whose intrinsic reliability was far, far better than the M16's one. Despite being heavier, it practically never jammed and used 30-round magazines instead of 20. The AK-47 shoots a heavy, slow bullet that gives it a shorter range and trajectory for more difficult to master for its user. But its power can be considered on par with the M16 to its larger diameter. If the American rifle went under several smaller changes over the years, up to change its name, the whole name to M4, the AK was a good rifle even for nowadays standards, and is exactly the same that it used to be during the Vietnam War. The only update it ever received during the 50s already was starting to build it using a lighter alloy. Very few weapons has ever been so loved in firearms history.